Look at Tokyo just after the Second World War, a society caught between its deeply rooted imperial traditions and a rapidly rebuilding American-influenced future. It is precisely this fractured landscape that British author Kazuo Ishiguro chose for his celebrated 1986 novel, An Artist of the Floating World. The guide for this journey is Masuji Ono. He is an aging retired painter living a quiet life in a grand traditional house, spending his days tending to his garden and entertaining his grandson. But a quiet tension undercuts this domestic peace. Ono is desperately trying to broker a traditional arranged marriage for his younger daughter, Noriko. A year prior, a similar negotiation mysteriously collapsed at the very last minute. The groom's family pulled out without a clear explanation. Now, Ono harbors a creeping suspicion that his own hidden career history poisoned the deal, prompting him to investigate his past before this new marriage prospect falls apart. Right from the start, Ono confesses his flaws to the reader. He openly admits that his memory is slipping and that the details of the events he's recounting might not be entirely accurate. By leaning into his own cognitive decline, Ono builds a false sense of security. Because he appears perfectly self-aware, we inherently trust him. Bypassing the usual skepticism we reserve for narrators who are actively trying to deceive us. Convinced his reputation is a liability, Ono embarks on an apology tour. He tracks down old colleagues and students, hoping to smooth over past grievances so they will provide glowing character references for his daughter's marital investigation. As he visits these ghosts of his career, a question naturally surfaces. What exactly did this seemingly gentle grandfather do to warrant such anxiety? To find the answer, we have to audit his memories. We have to pry apart the facts of his life from the emotional fabrications he constructs around them. The moment Ono begins recounting his early career, we are immersed in his highly subjective memory. As a young painter, Ono trained under a master named Moriyama. Moriyama demanded absolute devotion to visual beauty, capturing the fleeting temporary elegance of the floating world, completely insulated from the political reality outside the studio. But Ono rebelled. Influenced by a colleague named Matsuda, he abandoned Moriyama's delicate aesthetics to produce bold, highly political imperialist propaganda supporting Japan's expansion. Decades later, that fierce nationalism feels like an alien planet. Today, Ono watches in dismay as his grandson, Ichiro, ignores Japanese heroes in favor of a total infatuation with American cowboys. Surrounded by a culture eagerly adopting the customs of its former enemies, Ono assumes his history as a right-wing propagandist casts him as a massive looming villain to the younger generation. But when we examine how Ono tells his story, the cracks in his villainous self-portrait begin to show. He relies on very specific psychological mechanisms to warp reality. First, deflection, recounting long conversations, then abruptly claiming he might be inventing them. Second, blank spots. Tangents avoid confronting the wartime deaths of his wife and son, creating a void in his consciousness. Finally, exaggeration, insisting he ignores prestige, yet obsessively logging every compliment. Add these habits together, and a different motive emerges. Ono isn't hiding his guilt. He's actively trying to force his old friends to confirm that his wartime actions were actually grand enough to warrant attention. Let's bring this back to the present, to the stark reality of Noriko's marriage negotiations drawing to a close. The deal goes through. The groom's family accepts the match, and it appears on the surface that Ono's meticulous apology tour has saved his daughter's future. The truth behind this success is far more crushing than any rejection. Ono's frantic efforts to scrub his reputation turn out to be a waste of energy. To the modern family joining his own, Ono is a footnote. His career simply lacked the weight to influence their decision one way or the other. This anticlimax entirely shatters Ono's internal mythology. He was never a dangerous mastermind of imperial culture. He was, in the end, just a small-time, irrelevant painter. This leaves us with a fascinating psychological question. Why would a man actively lie to exaggerate his own villainy and guilt? Because for Masuji Ono, believing that he was a guilty mastermind who shaped the course of a war is emotionally preferable to admitting he is a forgotten, irrelevant old man. His personal irrelevance mirrors the broader tragedy of his aging generation, who find themselves abruptly left behind by a shifting national culture that no longer values their sacrifices or their mistakes. His manufactured self-importance is a shield. It gives his life a sense of gravity, masking his profound grief over the family members lost while he was chasing status. Ishiguro's unreliable narrator demonstrates how the stories we tell ourselves, however distorted, become the necessary armor for a life built on regret.